Hello, good
Hey.
afternoon, LinkedIn. Been so excited for this one. It's been months in the making with some of my favorite nonprofiteers here. I am Tasha, part of the nonprofit Hive, and actually how we all got connected was initially through the nonprofit Hive. So this is really exciting for me. Thanks for joining us. Part of our plan today is to talk about how these amazing nonprofiteers moved from the for-profit world into their nonprofit leadership positions today. I'm going to let them all introduce themselves in a second here. If you have comments, questions, things you want to join in on, please let us know in the comments. All of our panelists today have graciously said they would answer questions as we go. So without further ado, I'm going to first start with Michael introducing himself, telling us a little bit about his journey into nonprofit.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the time, and actually here just a fanboy, listen to these two other experts there in the space as well. But Michael Lee, Executive Director of the Pacific Dental Services Foundation, PDS Foundation, recovering attorney, and our three programs are health equity for special needs patients. We have scholarships to dental assistants, and we also have a sustainable clinic in Guatemala. I came to the space after, being a great attorney, but kind of lacking in purpose in a way, and being able to jump into philanthropy has been just a wonderful journey. Left the attorney world a little cynical, but entered the for-profit space. I mean the nonprofit space as a hopeful community builder. So it's been a journey, but happy to be here.
Absolutely. And you wrote a brilliant article already for the Hive about that journey. So anybody who wants to kind of read some of his backstory, great article, partly inspired me going, got to get on this. We got to do this talk. So Amina, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, everybody. Hello, Clayton. Nice to see you here. So my name is Amina Mohammed. I'm the founder and executive director of Cameras for Girls. We teach photography, storytelling, and business skills to young women in Africa to get them jobs in male-dominated media spaces. And my background is a filmmaker, producer in the Toronto film and television industry. That's where it all started many, many, many years ago. And from there, I jumped into mortgages, like huge different transition, which was really awesome. Making lots of money, everything was great, but I was miserable. And through my passion for storytelling, filmmaking, and my past coming from Uganda, I saw a need where I could take my skills and pay it forward to support young women to find their voices, build their confidence, and get them paid work out of poverty in media spaces. So we're in Uganda and Tanzania, next year in Kenya, and we're going to keep on expanding and doing this incredible work. And so I'm very grateful, Tasha, to be included in this awesome group. Thank you.
Awesome. Perfect. And Amina has also written for us, which is crazy. So Nelvin, you're next.
Exactly.
So I'm so sorry the pressure is on, because Amina also wrote a brilliant article just about leadership and particularly how challenging it's been in the Canadian space to break in, get the support you need. That's a few months ago. Amina wrote for us. So Nelvin, you're next, but also please introduce yourself. I'd love to a little bit more here.
Absolutely. I don't know if I can live up to Michael and Amina's standards when it comes to writing, but I'll give it my best shots. My name is Nelvin. I am the Director of Advancement for the Northeast region for Feed the Children. Feed the Children is an international organization, and our vision and mission is to see a world where no child goes to bed hungry. And we are actively working towards that mission on various fronts. I started in sales and banking right out of college, and I was in those two industries for almost 15 years. My belief in just wanting to see the world get better, I think, is shaped by my faith. I've always believed it was our duty to leave the world a better place than we found it. And I still believe that we all have a part in playing to make that a reality. On some level, I knew that I wanted to be in the nonprofit sector, but honestly, I didn't know where I fit in. I didn't know how to make that happen. So I kind of just chalked it up to an idealistic pipe dream. And that's what it was. That's all it was for a long time. Back in 2017, though, when my daughter Olivia was born, to make a long story short, she fought for her life for 9 months in the NICU, 3 different hospitals, 2 different states. She's alive and well now, but by the end of that 9 months, my vision for her future and the example that I wanted to set for her became clearer than ever. So I started volunteering and joining associate boards, figuring I could just do this on the side and just play a smaller role. But I was so hooked. It gave me so much joy just being in those meetings and volunteering in some small way. And I knew I had to find a way forward. So during COVID, I was able to, with the support of my wife, make the decision to take the chance and switch into the sector with the advice of a lot of nonprofit mentors and a lot of guidance.
I love that. I don't think I've heard your entire story, Nelvin, despite us talking about this in the past. So I love that. Beautiful. I may make, a little bit of, a spicy take, but I actually think people in sales are fantastic fundraisers. I always say to people who I know in business to business, I'm like, if you could convince a fundraiser to move over into your sales team, it's gold. These people know how to build relationships, right? So I love that that's your previous background, and lots of great people joining in here, moved over from the hospitality industry, transitioned into the nonprofit sector. I think it's fantastic. I love, here's our friend Zoe. I feel like all of us have met her at one point. Zoe, hello. What remarkable panelists. Totally agree, and super excited now that we have kind of kicked it off with your backgrounds. And I'm going to throw this back over to Michael first, but I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit, and you and I have talked about it additionally, but the inspiration to move into nonprofit work, like for you, was there like that moment where you're like, I got to move out of being an attorney, or how did that come to be?
Yeah, I can give you the day I thought about thinking about doing something different. I was basically handling a West Coast operation of a national law firm, and in the back, and I looked over the corner office, brilliant attorney, but second heart attack, third divorce, kids didn't talk to him, and I was like, is that my end goal there? So I do something different. So for me, was able to go get my MBA, and I got connected to the dean of social work there and hit it off immediately, and was able to kind of chat about, hey, what's next? What's the 2.0? So even to echo Nelvin, so I'm like, maybe nonprofit is the way to go, and my business skills and my legal skills could be of use. And my first entryway was the United Way locally, and I was able to meet a lot of people in corporate sectors who wanted to build community, even attorneys. But it was just such a cool thing to see. And I said, hey, this is where I was hooked. I'm in, and I needed some sort of North Star. I knew I was an attorney because I helped people out. I love helping people out and solving problems, but having this North Star and putting my flag on the ground, saying, hey, I do want to make it a more concerted effort towards making a change, was enlightening for me. So that's kind of like what my genesis was.
I love it. And Amina, you've been inspired to start your own nonprofit. So there must be a moment behind this.
I never set out to say, I'm going to go into the nonprofit space, because I was always an entrepreneur. I always was the out of the box thinker. My family called me the craziest person because I could never settle on one thing. Film and television was my life. But then, like Michael, right, I was looking at a lot of people in the sector who were divorced, burnt out, poor, even though they were making shitloads of money, excuse me, I'm allowed to say that, a year. They were blowing it up their nose, you can imagine, and they were just miserable, and there were long hours. And I had recently been married, and my husband, 2 years in, said to me, you want to stay married or you want to work in film and television? So I had to leave, right? And when I came up with Cameras for Girls, at the idea, it was the night that I decided not to do my mortgage broker exam. I had gone 5 years working in the industry as an agent. I was like, yes, my future. I'm going to be a mortgage broker and I'm going to have a big team and da 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 da. And I remember sitting in the room and getting ready to write my exam. And I looked around the room and I said, is this really the life that I want? Because I was not the corporate person. I was always the, hey, I need to work for myself because I cannot take direction from other people. I need to be the one giving it. So I recognized that within myself. But at the same time, I could not also just be there just to chase the dollar, because there's nothing for me there. It was not fulfilling. And I put my pen down, I walked out of the room, and I quit, like on the spot. And that night I came up with the idea. I woke my husband up at 3:00 in the morning. I said, Thomas, I'm gonna go and teach photography to girls in Uganda. And he looked at me and he said, oh shit, here we go again. And he turned around and went back to bed. And I sat up that night writing the business plan. And a year later, we were in Uganda for our test, for our pilot. And I think that the only reason I really got into nonprofit was the recognition that if I was to make this something, if I was going to have to raise funds, if I was going to be able to give tax receipts, like that was why I started the charity. Otherwise, I would have just stuck to, GoFundMe for the rest of my life and been in my little happy corner. But with growth came the realization that you had to go into the nonprofit. And so taking what I knew out of the for-profit space or the filmmaking space and all the skills that I had, I brought them with me to do this work, because I'm a solopreneur. I do this, we don't have the funding yet to hire a team. So I got to wear every single hat in this organization, including programming. But at the back of my head is, okay, put that out of the box thinking hat on. How can we make this bigger, better, and still work within the confines of what we do have to work with money-wise, right? With the goal of growing it later and incorporating both sides of your head so that you can bring those skills together. Because I don't come from the nonprofit world, so I'm constantly learning and iterating and reiterating to keep improving.
All right. I'm always in awe of what you're doing as a solo practitioner, because it appears like you have a team of 10. So
I do. They're all named Amina.
Yeah. So I mean, we're going to talk about that move to the nonprofit space a little bit in a second here. But, I know, Nelvin, you shared something super personal already about your move into nonprofit work as well. Anything further you'd like to add? Because, I mean, what you already said was beautiful. And I wish if I hadn't known you were going to say that, I would have tried to save it over to here. But it was fantastic. Oh.
Ooh.
Oh.
You're muted.
I am muted. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
But yeah, that was my main motivation for joining. It was, I think back in college, there was a seed that was planted in my head. I heard this CEO of Love 146, an international anti-trafficking organization, speak about what their organization does. And I was floored. I could not believe that this was happening, like that type of that level of evil and depravity existed in our world. And from that moment, I was like, man, someone should do something. Someone should do something about this. Why aren't we doing more? And I think that was when kind of like that nonprofit seed was planted. That's almost 15 years ago now, and it blossomed, and I'm really happy about the way it blossomed. I feel like it took its time, but looking back, I went through everything that I needed to go through to be in this place and to be as effective as I can be here.
I love that. You guys are all amazing. There's all these people fangirling and like all over in the side comments. I hope you guys can see this, because it's just absolutely fantastic. And, even very anecdotally, similarly for myself, I've been a generalist in many different industries, was very young, washing windows in the local university to make money. And I worked at an online dating call center once. And I've also been a frontline marketer and all of the different things. And this sector, just even this past weekend, finding out that I didn't know that you could donate organs when you're 90, but I found out this weekend at a nonprofit event that that's possible. And in Canada, the longest living organ in somebody's body is 109 because a 90-year-old donated it and it's still living in somebody's body. And you were just like, this sector is incredible. And I think once you know about it, it's so hard to, like, you can't back out, right? It's kind of that, I always say, the How I Met Your Mother, the glass ceiling, like the shattering it glasses and you can't put it back together. And so I think you fall in love a little bit, right, with what's possible in this.
I like to look at it like there's never a problem that does not need solving, but there's always somebody who's willing to solve it.
I love that.
I love that. I love that. And
That's great.
I tend to think that the nonprofit work is the interventions where, governments and corporations can't meet. So we are the space where we solve problems for where governments and corporations can't get in there, or even the individuals too. So I kind of see our work as vessels for impact and what people want to see in the world. I say this a lot. I say, hey, the foundation doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to the people who give through us to impact the beneficiaries we serve. And the thing is, to go on to Nelvin's point is that there's so many different nonprofits out there in space and different problems, or people trying to solve all these different problems out there, and it can be scary and a lot and overwhelming in a way. But having that curious mindset of, wow, this organization does this. Actually, going back to Nelva's comment, I did some volunteering work for a sex trafficking organization, and they needed some help with changing some of the zoning laws for women. I think in some cities, if you have more than 4 women living in a house, it's considered a brothel. So they were trying to do it's an old, like, archaic 1860s type of thing, but they needed help with changing some of the zoning laws to lift that. So these transitional homes for people who are experiencing sex trafficking can transition and be in a safe spot. But that's like one of the cool things. I'm like, okay, well, I like that. What can I do? And kind of jump in and being curious was super awesome for me.
I love that. So I'm gonna, cognizant of time, because I feel like we could talk about things forever. So I'm gonna go forward on one of my next big questions. And so often, even when I started to talk about us doing this session, people in nonprofits sometimes get their backs up, kind of going, oh, this is going to be another thing where it's like, here's what we should be doing in nonprofit because for-profit does that. And I wanted to be very clear, that is not this conversation. But your for-profit work is obviously going to influence and shape some of your approach to how you end up working in nonprofit, because I don't think it can. Even if in the same manner, if you worked in nonprofit, it's going to probably influence if you move into a for-profit organization. So I'm going to post it to Amina first. How did that for-profit background shape where you're at in your work right now?
I think it was being curious and coming in, recognizing I knew nothing. I knew nothing about this space. And I was not going to just say, okay, well, I did this way in, the for-profit, it's going to work. I use a lot of my skills that I learned in the for-profit space, filmmaking space, like scheduling, budgeting, learning how to make business plans, which turn into strategic plans. And, so that when I look at where we stand now with our eye to the future, everything is in place. But that comes out of asking the right questions, meeting the right people, or seeking them out. Who's doing what in this space that's really good, and I want to emulate them or be like them, and asking them. And if they're not the right person, then going down the next road. What I found in this space is people are really amazing, and they're willing to share because they've been through the trenches. They know how hard it is. They've risen to the top, if we can say there's a top, and they're willing to hold your hand until you come higher. And I'd like to think that that's a lot of the people. Becky's right there.
I know,
and when I started listening to podcasts as one of the things, reading a lot of books. And We Are for Good was one of the first podcasts that I found. And I reached out to them to say, hey, I love what you guys are doing. It was to John. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to the founder of Cameras for Girls. And I'm like, yeah, who is this guy? Right. And things moved and we came to talk, and then I became a guest, and I was like, oh my God, like it's just such an open sector that if you're willing to put yourself out there with humility and vulnerability, and you're willing to share that you know nothing, people are willing to teach you. So that's, I think, how I've kind of broached this whole thing. And I'm constantly learning. And I think I'm getting there, and then there's something new to learn, right? And so my advice is just keep learning, keep asking questions, be curious, talk to people, because they're willing to help you along the way. And don't think you know everything, because you don't.
I love that. And I mean, just threw up, impact up, pause. It was already on our list to shout out later, Becky.
Yes.
Just a heads up. But you got to us before then. Nelvin, similar question. You know, I mean, sales is a kind of cool banking, cool entry point to nonprofit work. You know, how has that shaped some of your work in the sector?
Yeah, well, I agree with so much of what Amina said, because a lot of it comes down to curiosity. You know, curiosity really fuels learning and professional development. I feel like I was really used to deadlines and projects and tasks that might have seemed repetitive after a while. The thing that I was really good at, and the thing that I really enjoyed, was talking to people. And in my past role, I was talking to employees of just various seniorities across the organization. And I think that was one of the most useful skills that I was able to kind of bring to the nonprofit sector, because all of a sudden I was able to just build relationships very quickly with different stakeholders across the organization. So that was a lot of fun for me. I feel like one thing that I had to unlearn, and Amina alluded to this as well, but I feel like I had to, and this is a good thing, I had to unlearn to separate work and life, because suddenly I was in this organization and surrounded with people who were just obviously good humans and incredible, passionate people, but they cared about who I was outside of just the context of work. You know, I feel like I made more friends in a few months at my first role in the nonprofit sector than I did at 7 years being with my last company. You know, and I agree with what Amina said. People want to see you succeed. People want to help you grow. There's a willingness to just walk alongside people on their journey, because you're all trying to accomplish this mission together. So it just makes sense.
I love that. That might be the best selling feature of the nonprofit sector alone, right? Like, I mean, I've worked in so many jobs where I could have been interchangeable with anyone else. And, you know, but I do think there's a lot of care in this sector for sure. Michael, what would you like to add to what your background has shaped into your nonprofit work?
I have to echo everyone by saying, hey, curiosity is king, and also the podcast and using LinkedIn as informational interview aspect of it has been just an amazing aspect of it. You know, Becky, John over We Are for Good. There's a community behind you. You are not alone. I know that there's some things that in your world that you may be different from others, but hey, there's plenty of us out there that are just willing to have, you know, pick up the bat phone. We'll chat you through it. It's an amazing community for good out there. I think probably my superpower is connecting. I'm not necessarily great in the brain space, but if I can get an answer, I'll find someone to get it to you. And I think that what I carried on from my for-profit space is being able to create partnerships, relationships in a way, and it's not that's a for-profit only experience or trait, but also it's a human trait. All long for connection, and you would be surprised about how many people out there are willing to open their doors. You know, come in my house, kick up your shoes, we'll give you a drink and just chat. So don't be afraid. And again, the world is filled with so many do-gooders out there. being able to find the space and being able to give yourself an amazing amount of grace too. Please, that's one of the biggest things out there. You can fail, you can trip up, but you have your North Star, you have your purpose. You will find your space, your heart, your drive, and you have an army behind you. So feel free to reach out.
So I'm going to jump in. Nelvin, this is headed over to you. And I mean, this is probably the number one thing beyond the compensation discussion, which we're not going to get into because that's a whole different thing. But fewer resources in the nonprofit sector sometimes. I think we all kind of acknowledge, you know, your marketing budget is going to be drastically different than when you were working potentially on a movie set or, you know, all of those different things. It is different work sometimes, and it's sometimes very different resources, often fewer. Power of community, but maybe the dollar power is lower. Nelvin, how have you found that that's influenced, you know, some of your management styles or leadership in the sector?
This is definitely true. The nonprofit sector is often asked to do much more with much less. But I don't know. For me, I found that that's what makes working at one so incredibly challenging yet so rewarding at the same time. It forces you to be creative, and for me, one of the most important pieces of this puzzle is collaboration. Collaboration does a lot of things, but I feel the biggest thing that I've seen it do is it helps people keep going. Levels of optimism and hope are higher and more consistent when you are collaborating and working with people who are just as passionate or even more passionate than you. You know, at for-profit companies, we're offering services or product, and we're asking people to exchange their money for that. Nonprofits, we're still asking people for money, but in exchange for what? You know, I've learned that telling real stories about your organization and the tangible difference you're making in their lives beats statistics and numbers any day. So I've learned to just tell your story a lot, tell it all the time, tell it to everyone who will listen. It's my favorite part about working with donors. You know, I've seen boundless compassion and generosity from people who want to give simply to make this world a better place and play a part in that by coming alongside us as partners in this mission. You know, I've met CEOs of really big companies, and I've met retired couples living so frugally, but what connects them is a shared love for humanity and being able to give what they can and trying to make this world better.
Absolutely. Superpower of the nonprofit sector, right? Mm-hmm. And Michael, again, fewer resources. You know, how do you see this play out in being the executive director at a nonprofit?
Well, you have to kind of pick and choose, right? I think with the way I structure my budgeting is, hey, where do I want to go? What's it going to cost, and how do we get there? That kind of strategic pillars, thinking about it. And there's certain things that may have to drop off. I have to be a little scrappy and you know, think of AI solutions or different things to be able to invest in that. But I'm very lucky to have a board that support what I do, but it's a lot of things like even marketing, right? Just like something that's far away from my brain as much as possible, but understanding it and trying to think my way around it. And it's fun. I think for me, it's running a nonprofit and thinking about how these different buckets go. We need to untackle that, hey, everything should go to programs type of thing because we need infrastructure, and that's important. So I'm happy to see that there's funders out there and people are thinking about capacity building, all that stuff, because we do have to be a little more scrappier. But I think that the technology world and our communities within the nonprofit space are creating those avenues for us to work better and collaborate. You know what? That's one of the biggest things that we need to do is remove those silos and work together. You know, for example, there's another nonprofit organization in disability space that really wants to focus on oral health. I say, why not try to do something together? So hopefully going down that aspect and partnering in different ways, because, we shouldn't look at each other as competitors. We should look at each other as we are going towards the same mission. We may serve the same beneficiaries, but there's ways for us to do it together. So, to echo on Nelvin's comment, collaboration, connection.
Love that. And Amina, I know, we were talking about that solo practitioner wearing all the hats are on. And I mean, Amina and I kind of connected and became closer friends, very much based on I'm living a very solopreneur lifestyle right now. And it's I think it is different, but the reality is many nonprofits are very, very small, right? Very small. And that's the majority of this sector.
Yep.
And, worldwide, any world you go to, there's how many big organizations and lots of small ones that are living a very different nonprofit life than others. How do you, handle that fewer resources conversation as a solopreneur?
First, I'll just say one thing to both Michael and Nelvin is together we go further, back to the collaboration piece, right? A lot of nonprofits are small and we rely on individual donations, or we're doing a lot of grant writing, and 1 out of 10 maybe that you might get. So you're constantly juggling your needs to hire people or even get paid yourself. I was getting paid for a couple of months. Now I'm not getting paid again. I do this 24/7. And then that means that if, I can't hire people to support me so that I can lay off some of the work that has to be done. Most of the funding that we do, we just got a massive grant from Estee Lauder, yes, which is going to help us do programming. But does that mean that I can, do capacity building? No, right? So it's always that 2-bucket thing. Okay, I'm doing a grant for capacity building, but they don't believe in us yet, even though we got this money over here to do programming and expand our services and, show impact and show that, our girls are getting work and we're alleviating poverty for them and all of this stuff. And you're constantly fighting against what your vision and your mission is against what's in the bank account. And that part truly sucks. As a visionary, as somebody who sees that with this amount of money, I could be doing so much more, or this, and then you can't get the stakeholders to see the vision, then you have to try the different way. So this morning, just before this, I had a conversation with somebody in Uganda who wants to collaborate. We're not registered there yet. We will be hopefully next year, where we can tap into more funding. But we can go around this by them approaching these same funders so that we can do collaborative programming together, which just builds up both organizations, right? So again, back to collaboration, partnerships, it's key, especially if you are a smaller charity or a smaller nonprofit and you have limited resources. Look to working with other organizations. Never be afraid to approach them with something that you can offer, because it has to be quid pro quo. And say, look, I don't have what you have, but I have this. How can we collaborate, right? And so don't look at yourself with the lens of scarcity. Always keep that mindset of abundance, because one day it is going to change for you, just as it did for them. If they got there, you can too. And that's kind of the way I have to look at it. Every time I get a no, it's a no, not right now, but it'll be a yes again soon, right?
Love that.
I love that flexibility. We do know quite a bit.
A lot. I mean, a lot.
But it's not forever. It's not forever.
Exactly.
Forever.
Yeah.
And I do see a shift. And for anybody who's on is still in for-profit on this conversation listening in, after I share it, I think this overhead discussion and exactly what Mina was talking about, if money can only ever go to programs, that does not create a sustainable nonprofit, right? Like that's not sustainable. That's not going to work. And, it's something I think that we all talk about internally frequently. And there's some of that, I mean, I've seen Charitable how many times, and I make all my family members watch it and, do all this stuff. But I do think it's still kind of an unknown that, well, who's going to run these programs? How are we going to do this? If you're running an international aid organization and Amina's in Canada, and then the work is being done in Uganda, what does that look like? How is that even possible for someone to do that unpaid indefinitely?
And I'll just say two more things if I can.
Yeah,
the first is that we are now looking at all of our avenues of fundraising. So what does that mean for capacity building? I can't rely on funders who don't get it. So I'm going to start building a monthly donor program, which is all about capacity building, right? So learning what you don't know, seeking out the experts in that field, and I'll give a shout out to Dana, who does the monthly mastermind. So if you're considering getting into from for-profit to nonprofit and you're scared about, how am I going to raise the funds? Well, we've been there. We're all doing it. We're all working through it. But again, there are people out there who know what, all the best practices, and they can teach you. You just have to be willing to be open to learn. And I think I lost track of my second one, but I think it enveloped somewhere in there. So, yeah.
That's okay. And we're already over 30 minutes somehow, which I knew was going to be a problem. There was no way it was going to be 30 minutes, which is okay. But what I'm going to do, you guys have already mentioned a bunch of resources, and I'm going to follow up with these amazing change makers to kind of put together a top resources from everybody. But one of them, We Are for Good, going to plug again, Impact Up, pause this week.
This Thursday.
Becky, if you are still on this call, drop it in a link, please, in the chat, because I can't do it from here that easily. So please go and do that. Really checked out Impact Up. It's amazing. Becky and John, incredible humans, put together something amazing. So resources, I'm going to follow up with everybody afterwards, get these people's top resources. But the one thing I really, really wanted to end with, advice you would give to those making the transition. And Michael, we're going to start at the top with you. I know you gave me some great feedback when you and I had, this conversation initially, but, what would be, top piece of advice, top two pieces of advice for those making the transition? Like, where do we start? How do we approach this move potentially into nonprofit work?
Oh, you would, not to do a plug for the Hive, but go for the Hive. Resources wise, We Are for Good is awesome for when it comes to podcasts. But head to your, start volunteering and start researching about the sector a little bit. Like, in your own localities, there's so many great nonprofits that are doing such good work, and lots of organizations that are really just here to help you, guide you where we want to go. Have that curiosity, and don't be afraid to be say and just walk up to someone and say, "Hey, I noticed that you work for X, Y, and Z. What's your experience?" So feel free to reach out. And again, there's some great resources online through here, but also in the podcast world to get you all situated.
Amazing. Amina, what would you, suggest, advice for those making the leap?
Research, especially if you have a passion for something that you want to make a difference in the world. See if there's somebody who already doing it and join forces. Don't start your own thing because you have to. I researched so many to see, is somebody doing what I envision to do? Because then I don't have to start my own thing and bang my head against the wall every day. I can join and make them stronger. So that's number one. And like Michael said, reach out to people in the sector. They're really willing to share their time, their expertise, their links to other people who are doing what you're interested in doing. You can volunteer and learn about the sector before jumping in like I did. Don't regret it because it's the best sector ever, but it's not easy. So really research and figure out if this is the jump for you before you make that jump. But come on in, we're friendly, we're helpful.
Everyone is lovely. I have to say, I've really not met, I don't know where all the bad eggs are hiding. They're clearly not in the Hive because you guys are amazing. And I'm just so thankful for this. And Nelvin, what would be your, look at all these lovely comments. People think you guys are amazing things, right? So Nelvin, what would you, what would be your last advice, making this transition? What would you say?
This is It's one of my favorite topics of conversation. So first, to anybody attending or watching, if you have this question and just want to talk about it more, feel free to reach out to any of us. We've already offered that up, but feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. We're more than happy to share. When I think about this question, I think about the quote from the activist and civil rights leader, Howard Thurman. He says, don't ask what this world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what this world needs is people who have come alive, and I think it's, for me, the advice is kind of really practical, figure out what you want to chase for the next 15, 20, 10, 15, 20 years of your life. If it's money and climbing the corporate ladder, there's no shame in that, because especially if you're giving back, because we need those people too.
Yeah.
We need these people too in our work. But if it's not money, find a way, big or small, to do something that you love, because it will nourish your soul and change your life like nothing else. The days of doing nonprofit work, it's not always easy. It can definitely feel heavy, but just by simply showing up and using your skills, you're changing lives across the world and making a difference.
Yes, Michael. Yeah.
I got one last thing.
Okay.
I just thought about it. Once you get in the sector, listen, actively listen, and just soak it all in. You may want to feel pulled to start making changes right away, but once you make the transition into the nonprofit space, just be a sponge. Be a sponge, because you're going to learn so many different things, and from your beneficiaries, the stakeholders, the board members. The listening tour is one of the things that I highly advise when it comes to jumping into space.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of this, inspiration behind gathering the three of you who I've had this similar conversation with separately was partly Carmen's on the call here, who is someone who was introduced to me, who is wanting to move into the sector. And I'm starting to see this interesting thing where people reach out about joining the nonprofit Hive and go, I'm not really in this space yet. How do I get in? Like, how do I do this? Like, what does it look like? And I know that this is just a starting spot, but I very much am saying, join, ask questions. I'm going to put you in a conversation with Amina, and she's going to tell you exactly how nonprofit work goes in all its glory and its messiness. And but there's something special in the hard parts too, and the challenges. And just despite some of what I thought the Hive was going to be, which was going to be hard conversations and people commiserating, it's that, but it's also freaking inspirational. And you just blown away by conversations I've had in this space. And, Ernesto, just passion plus presence equals purpose. Like, just, this is the space. So thank you all who attended for your many, many comments. I haven't even been able to keep track with all of them. And, look at Zoe, one of my favorite other nonprofiteers. Zoe. And, and actually, Zoe, I'm going to pull you back up again, because Zoe recently said in, a comment on a LinkedIn post, if not me, then who? And I think that is a thing. And, many of us are choosing this sector because we're going, if not me, then who? And if that resonates with you, this is maybe your space, right? So anyways, this was amazing. I hate to shut it down because it's so good, but please reach out to these guys, follow them, follow their organizations, like, be inspired. And thank you all for attending, because this was amazing. Thank you,
Tasha. Thank you, Nelvin. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
You all rock.
Bye.
Bye.